of Desiree Balubi, host of your favorite show, linguist and communication specialist at Norfolk State University in Virginia, USA. Please join me today in welcoming a special guest from Uganda on the east coast of Africa. His name, Teacher Peter Okware. He's one of the distinguished recipients of President Obama Nelson Mandela Young African Leaders Initiative's yearly awards. The topic today is our guest idea. I didn't make it up. And I put it in between quotation marks. He claims, and I quote, quality education, a human right, not a privilege. Teacher Okware, would you please introduce yourself to our viewers? Can you hear me, Teacher Okware? Please introduce yourself to our viewers. Teacher Okware, please introduce yourself to our viewers. Yeah, Teacher Okware is having an issue right now. We will try again. So the topic is quality education, a human right, not a privilege. That's what this yelly young man proposed, and he strongly believes in that. And we will ask him a few questions and see what this means to him and what are the implications and how he's actually applying this idea of quality education being a human right, not a privilege in Kenya. He teaches in the public schools of Uganda, and he has accumulated a lot of experience, and hopefully he'll be joining us in a minute. I think he's having a network issue to connect, but hopefully he'll be with us in a minute. So let me try again. Teacher. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know how significant this topic is. It's very important indeed. And people have said throughout the literature that without education, all nations are doomed to fail. Everything is based on education. And when we say education, it's not necessarily, instructions. Education, as a matter of fact, starts from home. Whether your parents are, have degrees, they've been to the so-called European schools or the formal education or not, I believe they give us basic education. And that basic education, we take it to school, and then at the school level, with all the stages, kindergarten, elementary, primary school, you will call it in some countries, then secondary school, and finally tertiary or college education. And education is very important. Maybe that's why it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of things. It costs a lot of preparation for teachers, for government, for everybody. It takes a lot. We invest so much into education. We have to do so. Because without education, as I said earlier, we are doomed. Doomed forever. People complain about the cost of it, but as some people say, just wait until you get none at all, or costly. So we need to take education very seriously. So education specialists have been writing about it. They have been doing their best and training teachers at all levels so that they can be able to meet the challenges, confront the issues, the concerns, address them, making the right choices and doing the right thing. Africa needs education, but quality education. Human right, not a privilege. And as I said before, this young man is from Uganda, not far from Kenya, as actually they're side by side. It's just on the east coast of Africa. We usually don't get many people from that side to interview. So this is really a great opportunity. I hope this will work out fine, and we'll hear from this gentleman. And you'll have the opportunity to ask him questions, and a lot of questions. I will ask mine, he will be answering, and then you can just jump in and call the number that our producer, Malik Sal, will put on the screen. So, so if it is a human right, what does that actually mean? We need facts to support that. We need to explain why it's human right and why it is not privilege. We also need to understand what is happening in Uganda, what the government is doing, and what teachers are doing, what parents are doing, what kind of funding they receive, and what they do with the funding, and how they assess the quality of their education given at all levels. How do they assess that quality? What are their benchmarks, their targets, and how do they prove to us or to themselves and to their government that they are making progress? What is progress to them? What's the yardstick to measure progress? What contributions do they make? And what about students themselves? How do you know they're learning or they're not learning? Do they have any input in the curriculum? Do they contribute anything? And the teachers are being well prepared? Are they well trained? And if they're well trained and they're teaching, how do you measure to quantify and also evaluate the quality of their performances? Do students take part in that? I know in the US, a student will give their input, a kind of evaluation at the end of each semester. There's a survey, and each student has to give feedback in terms of not grading, but providing quantitative data for each professor, each instructor. And that feedback helps the instructor actually to do better. Even if the instructor did wonderfully well, okay, there's still room for improvement. At least they can raise the bar. They can challenge themselves, and do better. Maybe they're doing wonderfully because there are not sufficient challenges. Maybe they need to raise or change the benchmarks, change the targets, and be able to tell whether they've met those targets, and at all levels. There's always room for improvement. And what do parents contribute? Do they have to contribute? Of course, we will say they need to support the system. Support the system means that they are giving feedback as well, depending on at which level. Is it elementary? Yes, parents are involved a lot. Secondary school, what we will call high school here in the US, yes, you get feedback from parents. Parents are collaborating with teachers, but at the university level, it's a different ball game. So I hope this thing is going to be fascinating and interesting to hear from, as we put it, from the horse's mouth. And Teacher Okware is getting ready. He will answer all the questions. I have just a handful for him, and he will just help us better understand what is going on in Uganda in the education system. And he is an agent, as an instructor. He participates, he contributes to what teachers do in general. And I believe for him to receive the yearly award, he must be one of the best in his category.
That's fine.
Sir, Okware, Teacher Okware is Director of Teachers in Need, which he calls TIN, T-I-N. I will ask him questions about that. He's also the founder of Teachers TV Africa, which is a newly launched project, which is very interesting. So those, that project will certainly contribute to informing and sharing information with teachers at his level, the level where he's teaching, and that would be positive contribution. And he will also tell us what education is like. Okay, so let me say again, quality education is a human right, not a privilege. And Teacher Okware, please introduce yourself to our viewers. They've been waiting for you, and now here you are. Please introduce yourself briefly, will you?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. Firstly, I apologize for taking a lot of time. I'm Teacher Peter Okware from Uganda, East Africa, the Pearl of Africa, and I'm very privileged to be here on WhatsApp Africa and Temple TV, Africa, or Africa TV. I'm a Mandela Washington alumni 2021 from the University of Georgia, and I was under the track of leadership in civic engagement. And I'm also a teacher in Uganda. I've been teaching for the last 10 years. I'm also a school director, and I'm very privileged to be here because I believe that our challenges and our solutions in Africa are very unique and uniform since we are on the same continent. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Teacher Okware. What do you mean when you say quality education is a human right and not a privilege, based on facts in Uganda's schools, colleges, and universities?
Thank you. Now, basing on Uganda's schools, colleges, and universities, we strongly believe that currently, if you look at the education mainly in Uganda, and I believe that's the same in other African countries, there's a difference between education and quality education. Now, if you look at education in general, most people believe that education is the same. But for us, we believe that quality education should be for everyone. But if you look at it today, people who attain quality education are those privileged children or privileged people from well-to-do families, whereby you find that their parents have enough resources that can enable them attend good schools. And when they attend good schools, they can easily make informed choices and informed decisions. Now, if you make your research, you find that a number of children or a number of learners whose parents are underprivileged or are not favored in one or the other, mainly financially, their children end up studying in public schools, and these public schools, they have so many children, and at times even the teachers or even the private schools, they don't have the good standards that can enable them get practical education, solution-based education, and quality education. So at the end of the day, it ends up being that quality education has become a privilege to those few whose parents or who have the capacity to afford it. And if it comes basically in secondary education, it becomes more of a privilege, because in Africa, for a parent to take a child into a university, like mainly here in Uganda, so many parents end up selling most of their properties, others sell land, others sell their houses in order to be able to get the quality education. So it ends up being that the more education becomes good, that's the more it gets deceiving for that disempowers or disadvantages many people from attaining it. So we strongly believe that quality education should be a privilege, whereby every child should be entitled to good teachers, every student should be entitled to good content, every generation and every country, regardless of a person's financial capacity or financial muscle, we should all be entitled to quality education so that we can all favor while we are or the available slots maybe in the government and in the private sector. But today, if you also look at a number of programs basically sponsored by so many universities in the Western or in USA, they basically focus at the performance. But if you look at people who get the chance to perform to the standard that those universities are looking for, those are people who got quality education. And where do they get it from? They got that quality education from quality schools. So 80% of the children from underprivileged communities never get the chance of attaining quality education, not because they don't, but simply because they are kicked out by the system and the financial disabilities of their parents. So at the end of the day, we end up calling them that they are incompetent. We end up calling maybe most of them that they are lazy, but it's not out of laziness. It is simply out of the inability for them to get that quality content to be taught by quality lecturers, quality teachers, quality instructors. So we strongly believe that if we are to make the change we need for Africa, without blaming our governments, but we should look into ourselves and see ways on how we can make quality education a human right, whereby we shouldn't have the school for the rich and the school for the poor. We shouldn't have the school for the servants and the school for those to be served. All schools should be uniform. So that's why we say that quality education should be a human right, not a privilege.
Very good. And thank you very much. That's well put. Let me ask the producer, if I may, ask him to put up that picture about that says it's picture number 10 and 0. 10 is what's education like in Uganda, and the 0 is what's up with education in Uganda. And once they put it up, you will just summarize what's up with education in Uganda in general, and what education is like in Uganda for viewers who are not from Uganda. I know you've said a lot about your thought regarding human right, quality education being human right, not privilege. But what is it like in Uganda? So, producer, okay, can you say it, Teacher Peter?
I'm not saying it. Yes. I'm saying.
Okay. So what's education like in Uganda? If we say what's up with education in Uganda, what will you say?
Okay. Now, education in Uganda, first and foremost, we have good education, very good education. The only challenge with our education currently, it is not matching with the prevailing challenges and situation, whereby education in Uganda is more about competition, is more about performance. You find that so many schools are aiming or are looking at having the best performance so that they can appear in the media, so that they can get so many children. But at the end of the day, you find that most of those educated children end up being unemployed. So that is one thing with education in Uganda. And you find that a few children who make it up or who go to those good schools are privileged. Again, as I said in the beginning, there are those ones whereby their parents can afford. You find that those ones whom their parents are struggling, they end up going in the public schools, and others end up going in the private schools which are not that good, or community schools. Now, a big percentage of children who start primary in Uganda, a very big percentage, by the time of reaching secondary level, that is high school, that percentage is reduced by over 40% or 50%, meaning that by the time of just their time of completing the stage 1, that is senior 4 of high school in Uganda, the percentage has reduced by 50% or 40%. And by the time of reaching the university or tertiary institutions or colleges, higher colleges of learning, you find that the percentage has reduced to even below 30%. So you find that based on the factors, the major factor is the financial constraint that most parents face. And the second one is maybe along the way, most children are kicked out of the system due to their own making, and challenges like the girl children. Most of the girl children end up getting the girl children. I go ahead. Okay, the girl children end up getting pregnant. So at the end of the day, they find themselves being pushed out of the system. Now again in Uganda, you find that 70% of the schools are privately owned. They are owned by individuals, and it's like 30%, if I'm not mistaken, that are owned by the government. Yes, they take proportionally a bigger number or the same number with the ones that the private take, the more schools, simply because the ones for the public are very reliable. Most of them are free. They provide free education, mainly on primary level. And again, most of them, you find that so many of them have so many children, the public schools. Yeah. You find them with so many children, whereby the ratio of a private school to a public school in just a classroom, whereby in a private school, in one classroom, you'll find like 30 or 40 learners. In a government school, you'll find over 80 or 200 learners. That is in one class. Yeah. Now, what they do, they might just put various streams. So you find that the reason why most parents take their children to those bigger numbers, while knowing that the numbers are big, is not because they want, but because of their financial status, and they can't afford most of the private schools. And at the end of the day, when they don't perform well, mainly in the public schools, they end up again not going into good government schools. Then the outcome is when they don't go to the good government, mainly the good private schools in A level or secondary school, they don't perform well. So at the end of the day, you find that a person is handicapped from the day they start education to the day they end education. So even you find that our government puts what they call sponsorships, whereby the government gives scholarships those who have performed well, whereby they go the government pays for them to attend university free of charge. But again, a big percentage of the children or the learners that get the opportunity of getting those scholarships are the ones that have been in good schools, because they have been attending good education. So it goes back to the saying that quality education becomes more of a privilege, because these are the same people who end up getting the sponsorships. And again, these are children who are from rich families, whereby their parents can afford. So that's the way how education is. And finally, again, with education, you find that mainly most schools here in Uganda, in all sections, you find that they have associations that manage them. We have private schools association, we have public schools associations, we have various teachers associations that at least bring teachers together, that brings schools together, that brings school directors together and head teachers together to discuss a number of issues that at the end of the day enable them or enable schools to come up with better solutions or better ideas that can make education better. Now, if it comes like to the current situation, like currently the education, the way how it is in Uganda, currently we have spent 2 years when schools are under a lockdown in Uganda. We just had a very limited time, and that was in October, November, December, January, February. There were around 6 months when schools were reopened, and it was just partial reopening of some classes. And there are classes here that have never been at school since March 2020. Yeah, March 2020. So education in Uganda is quite interesting. We still have so many opportunities. We have passionate teachers, and we have parents who are very passionate. Just that most parents here, their main focus is performance. They don't demand school so much. Their only demand is performance. They don't look at other factors that groom and nurture children. So that's the way how it is. And finally, basing like on the photo that you shared, it really connotates with the way how our schools are, mainly the public schools. You find that they're highly congested. It's not that that's the way how maybe the government would like it to be, but it's simply because that's the only option for parents. Most parents can't afford the private schools. So they are highly congested. And you find that the learning conditions are not favoring. And those are the kids that at the end of the day go out to compete with other children who have been studying well, who have been feeding well, and who have been getting everything. So they can't be, you can't get a level ground in terms of competition. You find that even the level of English that children from the public schools speak is quite alarming compared to the level of English that the ones in private speak. It also goes back to the reasoning. You find that the reasoning or the way of answering questions and the general reasoning of children from public schools is quite different or way below those ones from the private. Why? Because mostly in the private schools, children are few. They have a good teacher-pupil ratio, whereby you find that at least there the teacher can attend to each child, compared to the public school, where you find that one teacher has over 120, 130. So with that, it is very hard to tell the competence of a teacher. And then, yes, like even the photo that you can be seeing there, you find that so many children or so many areas, mainly schools here in Uganda, in the rural areas, a number of them, they lack even shoes, whereby they go to school barefooted. Others, they don't have where to sit. But that one, most people here, they can't put it on the government. But I can't put it on the government. Personally, I put it on the parents, because parents don't want to play a noble role in the education of their children. Now, since primary education here in Uganda is free, most parents believe that everything should be done by the government, from feeding their children, dressing them, giving them shoes. So what most parents just end up doing, they just end up taking alcohol, boozing throughout after leaving their farms or their gardens, they just go to take alcohol. So you find that children, mostly here in the rural areas, a child will study. They will trek like 2 kilometers where the school is when they are barefooted. So education, in most cases here in Uganda, most people believe that it is the responsibility of the government.
Yeah.
Parents only think that their responsibility is to pay school fees. Thank you.
Okay, let me say this. I mean, the picture you're painting of education in Uganda. Okay, there's someone calling. Yes, you're on the air. We're ready to take your question. Hello? Hello, are you there? Are you still there? We're ready to take your question. Hello? Hello? Okay, so I understand that there are some discrepancies, or there are major differences between public schools and private schools. You seem to be telling us that in public schools, maybe the government have, does what they can, right? They do whatever they can. Yes.
So my question,
yes, you are on the air. You have a question to ask. We're listening. What's your question?
My question goes to our brother from Uganda.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
So my question is, the fact that today, looking at the globalization that we are all living in, I personally do strongly believe that the onus should be on our African government. It's not in Uganda only, but in Africa in general, to tailor curricula that will make our students, from elementary to university graduate student, more marketable on the global market. So today, if I were to send my kids into a private school, that is a choice of the parent. But I believe our friends from Uganda ought to make a call, a patriotic call to all Uganda government to not only tailor program that will make kids and graduates become more marketable, but also tailor curricula based in today's job market. So if we in Africa, I'm from Togo, by the way, we in Africa do see today that we are being taught history from Europe, not teaching African history, telling how to draw maps of Europe and all this, I think the emphasis needs to be shift away from those old doing. So I do not blame here parents who are able to put their kids into private school. I live in the US. My kids from kindergarten up to high school have been in private school. It's a choice. But I think in general, you should make a call, or you should tailor a case to call out for government of Uganda to rethink the approach to the curricula that are being taught in Uganda and again in Africa in general. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Teacher Pete Okware, what do you say?
Oh, thank you. Firstly, I'm appreciating the caller. His question is on point, and generally we are not reached on that section. You are still asking me about how education is in Uganda. The overall picture. But now, basing on the caller, at least it also takes me back to at least answer him in this way. I agree with him 100%. One thing that we do mainly at Teachers in Need, and that we recommend all other African countries to take on seriously, is to see ways how we can redesign our education to become more of solution-based education, whereby it can enable our children to become more practical and more agile in whatever we do. But if you look at our education across Africa, it is still more of performance-based. It is all about answering questions. It's all about going to the university. Personally, I hold a certificate in education. I hold a certificate in education, and I also hold a diploma in journalism and mass communication, which I got in 2012. But I've taught myself so many things. I've taught myself so many things that have enabled me at least get an opportunity of even training people who have masters. Why? It's simply because I try to make myself a solution. So this might be Teacher Peter with his own perspective, but on the African context, we should do a lot to see ways on how we can make our education more solution-based. That is one. We should make our education more competence-based so that at least it can enable our children to reason. And even that one, it will start with seeing the way how we can retrain and retool our teachers. Because at the end of the day, we might blame the government, but this is the truth. One thing which I've seen at times, all the challenges are just the outcomes or the results of the past mistakes. So the challenges that Africa is facing currently are the results of the past mistakes that weren't done right. But we still have the time to make things right. We may not make the current leaders right, or we may not make them do the right thing, but at least we can groom the next generation by doing one thing, by promoting mainly the education that we need, not the education that we want. The education that we need is that education whereby a child should go to school and get a good degree, then get a good job. That is the education we want. That's what each parent wants.
Yeah.
But the education we need is the education which should enable us not to answer the answered questions, because there are so many questions that were answered, that my parent answered, my great-grandparents answered, and they are the same question that I'm also answering, that my children will answer because of the curriculum. That is wrong for Africa. What do we need now? We need the education. We need the one which will enable us to answer the unanswered questions, the ones that even the teacher doesn't have the answer. So if me as a teacher, I have all the answers, but those answers are not making an impact in my personal life, how will they make an impact in the life of the learner I teach? So that one, it is our collective responsibility as parents, as stakeholders in education, to see ways on how we can promote the education we need, whereby we should looking for solutions. Now, one other thing, if you look at our education, it is creating more of dependency. Like you can even ask the caller who called previously and other viewers, how many of us take the responsibility of supporting our children to pay for their own school fees? Instead of saying, my son, my daughter, here is the school fees. When it is holiday time, how many of us take time to at least give them some responsibilities and tasks so that they can get that school fees and know that they worked for it, so that they can be accountable. And if they go back to school, they can go to school with one heart. But today, most of us as parents, we do all what it takes to take our children to good schools, but they don't value the money that we give them. So that's the way how we build them. We build them in the way that makes them to be very dependent. And at the end of the day, they can't become independent. And those are the leaders of tomorrow. And that's why we find that most of our leaders, they rely more on grants, donations, loans, simply because from family level to school level, we didn't teach them how to become dependent. We didn't teach them how to become independent. We spoon-fed them on how to become dependent, and that's the education we want. Then finally, if you look at today's education, mainly across Africa, it is more over competition, not cooperation. There is a lot of competition. Each school wants to be the best. Each parent wants each child to be the best, but that's not the purpose of education. Education is a service, and it's a basic service that builds the mind, that builds the soul, that builds the body, and that builds communities and nations. Now, if we put the element of competition in education, we lose the mark, and that's what most parents want. And that's why if you go and make your research, like all the viewers who are viewing us today, if you make your research, you'll find that today it is more of parents. Parents are the ones that are driving the education. They are the determinants. They are the ones that dominate schools. They are the ones that direct schools. We want this, we need this, we want this, we need this, simply because they are the ones who finance the schools. So that is more of the education we want. So if we are to change our education in Africa and in Uganda, parents should take the center stage by at least knowing exactly which type of education do we need. Should we focus on the education we want or the education we need? And do they know anyway what the two mean? Yeah, that's it for now, Professor.
Okay. Okay, the education we want and the education we need. There's a big difference between what we want and what we need. Having said that, can you tell us honestly, what do you think are some of the top priorities of the current Ugandan government, and how are teachers coping or dealing with those priorities? And we can show you if the producer is ready to put up picture 15. It's titled Useful Idiots. Picture 15, 1-5. But while he's doing that, he's looking for it, can you please tell us what are some of the top priorities of the government? Okay.
All right. Okay. Now, the top priorities like of the government in Uganda, they are not. It's not more of education. Like our top priority in Uganda, it is more of security. Yes, that's where our biggest budget goes, and that one at least it is mainly evidenced in like the level or the way how you find the quality and the nature and the condition of the public schools and even the private schools, because at the end of the day you find that what makes any school is the training center, the teacher training colleges where the teachers are trained from. But now if you look, and those most of the teacher training colleges are under the government. If you look at the level of our teachers here, most of them, I won't say that they are not there, but they need a lot of support, and that support shouldn't come from them. That support should come from the government, whereby the government should put up, apart from just talking about the 21st century skills or the 21st century marketable skills that each teacher or each child should have, we just talk about them, but we don't put them in practice. So it's all about the government not prioritizing it, and the priority of our government is more on security, and more on security. So that's the priority of our government, not education. Education, I think, education. If it's in numbers, education might be among the first 5, but not among the first 2 or 3.
And how are teachers responding to that?
Okay, now the way how teachers are responding to that, basically, if you look at the teaching profession, the teaching profession is more of a calling. So most teachers, they are very passionate. They are just serving the nation, and they love the teaching itself. So they end up finding themselves in the profession, just that at times, most of them become traumatized and others become discouraged, because you find that in our education setting, we don't have any, let me say, any center for depressed teachers. And the only places where teachers can take their grievances are mainly their school administrators, or at the divisions, whereby you find the educational commissioners. But even those ones, they are very few, they are limited compared to the number of schools and the number of teachers. So you find that the passion and the resilience, or that the true passion in the teachers, it is fading day by day. And you find that, again, most people today who are coming into the teaching profession, mainly in Uganda, they come to the teaching profession as the last resort. They don't come to the teaching profession as their first choice. It is just the last resort. So imagine if a person comes to the profession when it is their last resort. Will they have the passion? They may love it because it will be their source of income. It will enable them put food on the table, but when they don't have it at heart. But at the end of the day, some of them end up loving the profession, basing on two factors, basing on the CPDs. Those are the continuous professional development courses that they do get along the way. And others, they may end up loving the profession, basing on one factor, basing on their supervisors or their immediate bosses. But people who land in the hands of bad bosses and bad supervisors, basing on the overview of the nation, they end up becoming frustrated, discouraged, and at the end of the day, those are people who end up beating children in schools, giving them corporal punishments, and at times even running with money, pupils' money, like in candidate classes, the money for registering for final exams. We have seen so many head teachers or even teachers running away with it. So those are mainly discouraged and disgruntled people who have lost hope. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot to do at that level. You know, when I heard you say teachers, Ugandan teachers are passionate, but not many of them actually are, based on what you just said, because, you know, they don't have mentors. They have mentors. Those are not doing their job properly. So teachers actually need to come to the teaching profession out of love. It is because this is their passion. This is what they want to do. But if they are coming to the teaching profession as the last resort, I mean, it's problematic. Can you imagine somebody becoming, let's say, a surgeon, medical doctor as last result? Yeah, I can imagine them doing their job with no enthusiasm at all. You know, it takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of love, because to teach actually is to help people to learn and to be able to learn oneself as well. You, the teacher, should be prepared to learn. I always tell them myself that the day I stop learning, I must quit teaching. And that should be true for all teachers all over, I believe. Now, do you honestly believe that supporting teachers will result in improving the quality of learning in Uganda? We have, maybe the producer will show you the image number 2, supporting teachers. And what kind of support do you believe they need? Is it more salary? Is it the working conditions? And having given them all of that, do you believe it will actually translate into better quality education in Uganda?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. What I might not say this is what I believe in, but this is what I think can work. I think the right thing that should be done mainly in Uganda, it should be to start with the recruitment process. What? Because regardless of all the remuneration, the working condition, the salaries, and the CPD, if a person is not passionate about that, they might never get the passion. So what I believe in, or what I think, we should start by looking at the recruitment, like how do we get these teachers who go to the training colleges? We should look at that critically. So if we look at that critically, It will greatly support us in Africa and in Uganda, at least to get the right people who love the profession, not because of the benefits that might be attached to the profession, but who are born to be teachers, or who love to be teachers, or who desire to be teachers. Like you might find in politics, you find that so many people today might have gone to politics, but when they don't love the politics, they have gone to it because of the huge salaries. They have gone to it because of the huge benefits. But when they are not serving to the expected, to the expectation of the what they should be delivering to their constituency. So that's the same thing. We should put good indicators and good score points that at least a person should first attain in order to go into a teacher training college. That is one. Then the second thing to be done, we should also look at the remunerations or the salaries. If you look at the salary of a teacher in Uganda, the average salary of like a primary school teacher is more or less $100, $100 per month. Now, if you look at the cost of living is quite high. So you find that a person can't balance. There is no balance. So that teacher can never teach with a settled mindset, simply because they have so many demands to meet. They have school fees to pay. They have rent to pay. They have families to feed. But if you look at what they are getting, it doesn't match with the demands. Then that's second. Then the third one should be supporting teachers again with the condition, the better working conditions. Like if the government can come in and support schools, private and public, with mainly like things like supporting schools to get spaces where they can put accommodation for their teachers. At least it can enable people work with a certain mindset. And when they are working nearby schools, but you find that so many teachers in both public and private schools, they don't have accommodation provided to them by their schools. So they end up again paying for their accommodation using the little salary that the schools give them. So you find that the person is highly handicapped and their standard of living is greatly affected. So when they are not mentally stable, they end up exhibiting or showing all their instability in class by not teaching well, or by not adopting to the new teaching approaches, and even by not even loving the teaching itself, simply because they have a lot on their heads. Then finally, we can also look at conducting various professional development courses that can enable teachers to learn how to spend, how to invest, and even how to be better teachers. Because at the end of the day, the only courses or CPDs that are mainly organized in Uganda for teachers are on teaching how to become a better teacher. But these people again need other courses, like how can I invest what I've earned? How can I buy a plot of land? How can I do a side business? They need, how can I manage my responsibilities? Because at the end of the day, I might be a teacher, but when I'm struggling in other areas of life. So you find that most of our courses or our mentorship programs or our trainings, like which are given to most teachers, they are only on how to be a good teacher, how to support a child to pass well, how to scheme, how to lesson plan, but they don't focus on how to develop the teacher beyond classroom. And that's why you find that that's the same thing that teachers also give. Simply because we are only acquainted with classroom knowledge, that's what we can give to the learners. We can't give them anything beyond classroom knowledge. Thank you.
Okay. You just mentioned promoting teachers. Okay. So we're talking about the working conditions and all those good things that the government need to do for the teachers to be encouraged to be more enthusiastic and do a better job. How are their performances assessed, evaluated in Uganda? What do you call a good teacher? It's average or top notch. Do students have some input in evaluating teachers' performances?
All right. Now, that's a good question. Now, let me just be precise on that. Here we have only one yardstick, one evaluation approach. Those are the national exams. Children who pass highly or who pass well, those ones, they are regarded that their teacher is good. Full stop. There's no any other yardstick. You find that mainly teachers who are not teaching in candidate classes, their goodness is never felt simply because there are no indicators, there are no assessment strategies that are put in place to assess them. So the only yardstick is the national exams. And those are the teachers who at times are also rewarded by their schools. Those are the teachers who are, at times they are put on newspapers simply because they got the highest number of first grades. But apart from the classroom performance, apart from the national results, there is no any other yardstick that we focus on in Uganda.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing is some organizations are starting up programs of awarding the best teachers based on other factors, but they are still growing. But the general overview is mainly academic performance.
Academic performance, and now I understand why there will be competition, because if this promotion is based upon how many students were able to succeed or to pass national exams, then we're teaching so that our students can pass exams. But as you were saying, I would agree with you in the very beginning, it should be education, should be competency based, it should be about critical thinking, it should about learning how to do certain things and be in control of those things, so that when they graduate, they don't just have paper to show, they don't just have degree, but they can do something. And that's why some schools or some education system are putting a little bit more weight on technical or hands-on and project-based learning, so on and so forth. Okay, and you also mentioned the issue of affordability. Okay, parents can only afford to send their children to public schools, and private school might be more costly. Okay, so the cost of education, I can tell that it's not that it can be prohibitive. And very few people will be able to afford and have access to what you call quality education. Let me ask you this, do you believe in free universal education? I believe there's something called free universal secondary education in Uganda, just like you have universal health care. Do you have such a thing, in the public school, universal education?
Okay, thank you. Here in Uganda, we have primary university, UPE, Universal Primary Education, that is for primary, whereby children attend it free of charge, and the government foots the bills, but they pay mainly utility charges, like to maintain electricity, water, food. Then we also have USE, Universal Secondary Education, that is for secondary, which is still growing. Personally, I believe in universal primary education or secondary education. I believe that there should be free education, but we should also consider or look at what is the nature of the free education. Simply because people, if we are paying taxes, that's the way how the citizen should see value. We should see value through the free education, because based on the poverty index in Africa, so many parents might not be able to afford. And it has, like the free education, only the primary free education in Uganda, it has done a lot of good things, simply because there are so many children in the beginning weren't able to go to schools, but so many families were able to take their children to schools because of the universal primary education. So I believe that we should have even not just ending at the universal secondary education, but looking at the quality of that education. It shouldn't just be education of us taking our children to school, of us going to those schools. But it depends on also, it should go to the point of what are we benefiting? Am I able to come out of that school when I'm able to write just a letter? Because you find that so many children from such schools, they can't write a job application letter. A person can't reason. They can't give a public speech. They don't have the critical thinking. And I think one of the challenges that we have today is exhibited mainly, or it is evidenced in the way how we raise our dialogues. You find that so many people in our societies, mainly in Uganda, you find that whenever you try to challenge their reasoning, they look at you as an enemy. It's simply because it goes back to the quality of the education that we got. So the universal education is highly appreciated. We embrace it, but I think and I believe that we should look at the quality, its quality. And one way that I believe we should look at the quality, this is my appeal to all our public leaders, our public servants here, that we can't make it better if we still have the private schools, whereby all the first-class schools, whereby people, the policy makers, where they take their children. I strongly believe if we are to make our universal education very qualitative, even our policy makers, mainly in the first class public servants, the MPs, the ministers, and the people who are in those high-end positions, all their children, all their relatives should be enrolled in the universal education. So if their children are enrolled in universal education, that is the best yardstick on how they will advocate for the best policies that will be for the betterment of all, not just a few.
Okay, good. But I have two more questions for you. We're running out of time now. Let me say that despite funding, because you talked about, I believe, large classes, we need money, we need to support teachers as well. But despite funding from the World Bank, okay, and we have pictures showing that, and we have pictures showing large classes as well. So despite funding from the World Bank, in addition to national investment, there still are major challenges. And for example, the large classes that you referred to that I just mentioned, but there are ghost teachers, right? And insufficient infrastructure, classrooms and instructional equipment. And this must be major concerns for teachers, parents, and even the government, right? So what's being done as a remedy in Uganda?
Oh, now with that, mainly the funding is there, the ghost teachers are there. Currently what the government is doing, the government is trying to re-register teachers. That is one thing that they're doing. They're trying to re-register all teachers to see that teachers can be enrolled on the national program to find out how many are we in the nation and how can we be supported, or how can the schools be supported, and how can the ministry plan for the teachers properly. Then the other thing is we have so many organizations that are advocating for better changes in education, whereby the government itself should take the responsibility of doing the good.
Yes? So you're saying that the government is taking responsibilities, they're making steps towards resolving those issues, those challenges. And thank you for answering that question. And are you ready to answer? I mean, to make your concluding remark, give us your concluding statement, and that concluding statement will be on what you really like about Ugandan education system, and what could or should be done for improvement. Teacher Peter. So, ideally, when a lot of money is being spent, and it should be spent, I would say, where should we spend money in terms of, you know, when we're trying to develop, when you're trying to emerge, when we're trying to be at the top, when we're trying to meet the challenges of today's world, of the 21st century. I think um, uh, most of our investments in terms of human resources, financial resources, should first of all go into education, because if you don't have education, you have no nation at all. You have no nation. Then okay, then it should also go to healthcare, and then nowadays we're all talking about security. So security is a big issue wherever you may be. It's not just on the west, on the east coast, the northern or the southern part. It's all over the world. We should invest into that as well. And Africa in general, relying more on agriculture. You know, money should go into agriculture itself, not just to grow food and then export tobacco or cotton, but to actually produce what we consume and consume what we produce. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've covered quite a bit of ground today, and teacher Okware will certainly come back, and if any one of you would like to share what's up with education in your country, in your region, in Africa, be it in the southern part, the central part, the west and the east and the northern part, you are welcome here anytime. So we're almost at the end, and let me conclude by saying this, dear friends and viewers of our show. Thank you for being a part of this 60-minute enriching event from Uganda. And now, before we close this session, here are a few things I wish you would remember. And I say this almost on a weekly basis. Number one, quality education, as far as this event is concerned, quality education can be costly, but what if you had none? Think about that. Number two, it is indeed a human right, not a privilege. It's a human right. When we say education, we don't mean any type of education. It's quality education. And that type of education we receive should go a long way, not just to lend us some work and employment, but to contribute to building our nation, to making our countries stronger and more sovereign. And we want Africa to be more sovereign than it has ever been before, counting and relying on ourselves first, and then developing allies, and treat those kind of alignments, treat them seriously, and making sure that we're getting involved in win-win kind of alliances. And number four, what's up Africa? What's up Africa? Remember, through Temple Africa TV in general, Temple Africa TV, we want to put it on satellite for you, because we're here to serve you, right? So please don't forget to write that check, whether it's a fat check or a slim check. It doesn't matter. No matter how much you want to write in that check, we need that. Don't put off supporting us financially through GoFundMe.com. And the producer, could you please put that on the screen for them to say, we're talking about supporting Temple Africa TV, okay? And I will say thank you, Teacher Okware, for coming and then for sharing so much with our viewers. We hope you'll be able to come back or talk to your friends, anybody from Kenya, the neighboring country, or from Ethiopia, wherever you may have friends, if they can come and share with us, so that they learn from the Ugandan experience, and then you learn from their experience, and together as a continent we can get better. Okay, So we're saying that viewers and all fans and the friends of Temple Africa TV, we need your help because this is your TV. This is your TV. We're about to go on satellite, and you can go to GoFundMe. We have an account number. Please go donate whatever amount you can afford to donate. You can reach us through GoFundMe.com. You can write to us, africtv@gmail.com, to ask questions and tell us your stories and come to the show. Okay. That WhatsApp Africa also solicit donation to annually reward and stimulate excellence, innovations, and inventions in Africa. Temple Africa TV. We have strong faith in Africa's new hope, as you may have realized, and we strongly believe that the best is still ahead. In spite of all the challenges we've discussed today, we haven't even discussed 1/10 of those challenges, but we believe better days are ahead, and the sun will rise again. Teacher Peter Okware, my heartfelt appreciation goes to you for coming to this show. I also must give a big shout out to our producer Malik Sa, who's always working incredibly hard to make sure that we soar like eagles and touch down safely on solid ground so that we can be ready to fly again. Even higher, he says, higher, 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 better, better, better. And you've heard that from him, higher, 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 right? So thank you for watching tonight, and may God bless you all.
Nouveau à Minneapolis.
Thank you.
Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.